I understand. I just need you to know it won't happen again. She said it quietly, without pleading, standing in the doorway of his office with her cleaning cart still in the hallway behind her. Her name was Brinley Sove, 26 years old. She had been 40 minutes late that Tuesday morning because her neighbor's child, a 7-year-old boy whose mother had been taken to the hospital overnight, had been alone and frightened, and Brinley had stayed until a relative arrived. She had called in. She had explained. It hadn't mattered. Colton Vare was 33, CEO of Vare Property Solutions, a man who had built his company on the principle that standards were standards regardless of circumstance. He looked at Brinley across his desk with the expression of someone who has already decided and is waiting for the conversation to conclude. Company policy is clear, he said. 3 late arrivals in a calendar year. This is your 3rd. Mr. Vare, I'm sorry, Ms. Sove, that's the decision. She nodded once. She didn't argue. She took her cart and left the building with the particular composure of someone who has learned that dignity is the one thing no one can actually take from you. Colton returned to his email within 4 minutes. What he didn't? No, what the HR file hadn't included, and what Brinley had never mentioned to anyone at work was that the 2 previous late arrivals that year had also been for other people. The first, staying with an elderly neighbor who'd fallen and was frightened to be alone until the ambulance arrived. The second, helping a young woman at the bus stop who was having a panic attack and couldn't be left. She had never explained any of this to HR. Not because she was proud, but because it hadn't occurred to her that her reasons were the point. She'd been late. She'd accepted that. She'd simply hoped, quietly and without great expectation, that one honest explanation might find a human ear. It hadn't. She found new work within 3 weeks, a cleaning position at a medical office building 2 miles north, slightly lower pay, slightly better hours, managed by a woman named Odette who asked at the interview, not just about availability but about character. Brinley settled in. She continued being exactly who she was. 4 months later, on a Wednesday afternoon in March, Colton Vare's 4-year-old daughter Wren slipped her hand from her nanny's grip outside a cafe on Clement Street and ran 2 steps into the road after a rolling ball, directly into the path of a car that did not stop. Brinley was on the sidewalk across the street, walking to the pharmacy on her lunch break. She was running before the sound had fully registered, not thinking, not calculating, just moving with the same instinct that had made her stay with a frightened child on a Tuesday morning 4 months ago. She reached Wren, pulled her from the road's edge, absorbed the impact of the car's mirror on her own shoulder, and went down with the child held against her chest, away from the pavement, taking the fall herself. The car did not stop. Wren was unhurt, shaken and crying, but physically whole. Because Brinley had positioned herself between the child and the ground, Brinley's shoulder was fractured. She sat on the sidewalk with Wren in her lap, the little girl's face pressed against her neck, and held her steadily until the nanny reached them and then until the ambulance arrived. And she didn't let go until Wren was calm. She didn't know whose child it was. It didn't matter. Colton arrived at the hospital 20 minutes after his nanny's call. He found Wren in a side room, wrapped in a blanket, drinking juice, already describing the event with the narrative enthusiasm of a 4-year-old who has processed fear into story. Safe. Completely safe. The nurse told him the name of the woman who had pulled her from the road and taken the fall. She was in the next room, shoulder being assessed. He stood in the hallway for a long moment. Then he walked in. Brinley looked up from the examination table. Her face registered recognition, then a careful, practiced neutrality. "Mr. Vare," she said quietly. He stood in the doorway. His daughter was safe because of this woman, this specific woman, whom he had dismissed without hesitation across a desk 4 months ago. Brinley, his voice came out differently than he'd expected, lower, stripped of its professional register. "I don't know how to—" He stopped. Started again. "She's okay. Because of you." Brinley looked at him with the same steady eyes she'd brought to his office doorway in October. "I'm glad she's okay," she said simply. "That's all that matters." He sat down in the chair across from her and stayed there for a long time. Not talking much. Just present. In the way that people sometimes need to be present with their own reckoning. I was wrong, he said finally quietly. In October. I should have listened. Brinley was still for a moment. Then, I know you believe that now. A pause. I believed it then too, but I understand how the world works. It shouldn't work that way. No, she agreed softly. It shouldn't. He offered her the position back. She considered it for a week and accepted a different one. A facilities coordinator role his HR director had mentioned was open, something that matched her actual capabilities better than the cleaning card ever had. She negotiated her own terms calmly, and they were fair. Wren, for her part, asked about the lady from the street for weeks. Colton told her, honestly and in 4-year-old language, that she was someone very kind who had helped when it mattered most. Wren nodded seriously and said, "We should make her something." They made her a card. Wren drew a figure with a very large heart in the center of the chest and wrote, in careful, uneven letters, "Thank you for catching me." Colton delivered it himself. Brinley read it at her desk and set it against her monitor and left it there every day after, because some things deserve to be kept where you can see them. As a reminder that the kindness you give without audience or expectation has a way, in this imperfect world, of mattering more than you could ever plan. Every person you dismiss has a whole life outside your decision. Every act of care, however small, carries forward in ways you cannot trace. That is what dignity costs, and what kindness returns. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.